Okay, so I think I can probably begin. I think people will continue arriving, and but in the meantime, we can start. So, firstly, I would just like to say welcome and thank you to Rick Melville and Tim Chevalier, who've agreed to join us. And we are particularly thrilled to have them because I was saying to Trish, so often it's us or we get some expert to tell you how to do things. And that's not to say that Rick and Tim are not experts in their own way and their own fields, but they, both of them, did our memoir workshop in Barrydale, and both have completed manuscripts, which is a fantastic achievement. And we thought just for you to see that, yes, it can be done, they've done it, and ask them some questions will be enormously useful for you. So Rick, by the way, was not only a participant in Berrydale. He and his lovely wife Sue, whom I think I saw somewhere in the crowd, make the Karoo Art Hotel such a special space and is so perfect for us because it's so arty and creative, and that mix of, old school hotel that we all remember, but zhuzhed up just enough so that it's comfortable and beautiful with art everywhere. And the food is fantastic. And if you do come, we will drag you down to the Trudeau Pass early in the morning and force you to leap into the icy cold river. Although Tim wasn't persuaded, were you, Tim?
I got very close. Do you remember, Rick? I agreed in the pub that night that I'd do it. And then I spent that, and what month was that workshop? What month was
Well,
that?
I think that was later. I think that was June or July, so that
It
was
was
chilly.
midwinter. It was
This
midwinter.
year it's May, so the weather will still be nice.
Yes. And I remember that Rick came to my door with his little radio at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he had this little wake-up tune. And I thought, oh no, I don't think I can do this. So I said, Rick, can you forgive me? And he did forgive me. But since then, Rick, I've taken to cold water swimming. So next time
But
I will
none,
join you.
but nonetheless, you managed to finish a manuscript, even though
Yes.
you chickened out of that first swim.
Yes. It's
So
been
let's start by, I'm going to ask each of them, and I'm going to alternate between them, and ask each of them the same questions. But I'm going to start by saying, please tell us a little bit about the manuscript that you've just completed, and where are you in the process now? What do you intend from here? So, Rick, shall I start with you?
Um, am I here? I'm not seeing myself anyway. I'm probably
Oh,
somewhere in
you
the.
are. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm looking straight at you. So
we
you're
can
Okay.
see you,
definitely
Rick.
here.
Wave, Rick, wave.
Okay. So, yeah. Well, mine's a bit different. Mine's a cancer, a cancer book. And if I could just ask for a hands up, who has had or is close to someone who's got cancer in your life from everyone here?
I've
Yeah,
had.
yeah. think I
Yeah,
think
it's
most
quite
people.
a thing. So, um, I went through all that a number of years ago, and I was diagnosed as stage 4, which, and you ask your oncologist politely, what does that mean? And he says, terminal, So, you get told you're going to die in a way, and forgetting that everyone's going to die. But um, I found myself so overwhelmed by this onslaught, and I was totally unprepared for it and completely sunk into too much information and going on to Google and all that sort of stuff. So I decided to do something lighthearted, like a first read to really put people at ease. And so I've kind of written in a way, well, it's serious, but it's quite a light-hearted approach in a way. I've illustrated myself, and it's one of those things. It's I think it's quite refreshing.
Great.
So
And
yeah,
now you have you are are deciding now to self-publish, am I right?
yeah. So the process I went through, I had a very nice art director. I was going to self-publish all along, and so I come from a creative background, and for me, it's all, in a way, in some ways, it's all about look and feel. So I had that sort of thought of what I wanted it to look like and how lovely it should be and stuff. And I found out almost immediately that that would have to be self-publishing. Um, so I got a very good designer involved, met her through other people, and so now she's William Kentridge's book designer. But not expensive or anything, but she really took it on and gave it a beautiful look. And so took it through I've taken it through the whole process. It's edited, it's actually finished. Um, and it's done and dusted with an ISBN number, whatever you call it. And then I had, through some luck, a lawyer friend who's a lawyer stayed at the hotel informed me that he was the lawyer for the global publishing industry. And he said, well, I can get you to the best people imaginable. And so he went off with my book, and I got quite a quick response from Mensch Publishing in London. And then I had this very, very strange, they kind of took me on, and then it all fell apart in a way, because, yeah, it was all just very much about Amazon, which is obviously important. And I couldn't get them to take on there was going to be a hardcover and all that. So I sort of went into it quite fussy. Um, and on that, we got into a lot of conversation. They said, listen, rather you do it like you want to do it. And if it's a success in South Africa, then we'll take it on. So strangely, I had a publisher which I lost. So that's where I'm at with my
Okay,
book.
brilliant. Thanks, Rick. Okay, Tim.
Yes. Just in terms of, I've I've always really wanted to write my memoirs because I think I've had a really very nice life, enjoyable life, and I've been lucky to travel extensively, being a filmmaker. And I just thought it would be nice. I thought initially just to do it for my family and friends, and then I thought, well, maybe there's a story worth telling here. So I set about doing it, and I've really enjoyed the process, and it's taken me. I did procrastinate quite a bit because I found that when I got busy, I kind of put things to one side, then I'd disappear and come back from my travels, and then so it's taken me a long time because I think that workshop that we did was about almost 4 years ago in Barrydale. So it's taken me this long to bring it to fruition. I've haven't yet decided about publishing, whether to self-publish or publish commercially. I'm still debating that. So I'm literally just fine-tuning the manuscript now. But it's all complete. It just needs fine-tuning. And then I'm speaking to people who've published as well and just finding out what their experiences are like, Roger Lucy and Kingsley Holgate and people like that, just to see what their experiences and it's quite interesting to see what they say.
Brilliant. Thanks. Okay, so back to you, Rick. I'm going to ask, how did you begin and what kept you going?
Um, well, look, I began with a mission. I sort of took it on as my personal, I don't know, calling to help people. So I had that on my side, and to sort of try and get them out of this terrible loop of information, etc. So I think, look, definitely, the memoir workshop itself was a huge help to me because I'm a scriptwriter by trade. I write corporate films and videos and stuff. And so I've never really regarded myself as a proper writer. But I found in quite a short space of time, the stuff that came out of the workshop, it just gave me really things to hook onto. And so that was my beginning, really. And that was my kickoff. Actually, it forced me to start. Well, encouraged me to start. And yeah, I went on from there.
Okay, brilliant. And then what, that's how you began, but how did you keep yourself going?
Okay. Probably like everyone else on this call, I don't know, Sue's on the call, my wife, and like a lot of people, we just got too many things on the go all the time, and so where does writing fit in? And what I really came to was I kind of joined the 5 a.m. club. And so I try and be at my desk at 5. And and I don't really normally succeed with 2 hours, but I try and write from 5 to 7 because the phone doesn't ring. And it's a kind of I'm writing I'm writing a real memoir now called The Curse of Clockalon and the Search for the Proper Way. Um, and
Aha.
yeah,
That'll be a good one.
Yeah,
I've managed to persuade myself is the most important thing I can do because every day is just full of this, pressurized stuff, and we're involved in different businesses, and everyone, not everyone's shouting, but there's all this pressure of this minor little deadline. And when I sit down at 5 and I manage not to look at my inbox and not to look at WhatsApp and not to look at what's happening in Iran on the BBC app, um, I get this tremendous sense of doing the right thing.
brilliant.
And so it's the most important thing I can do. And
So that, yeah,
yeah,
lovely. Okay, Tim.
Yeah, I just want to
How,
mention this creative genius sitting opposite you on the other side of Rick and I met quite a long time ago in Joburg, and he had a company called Blue Moon, and he was so creative. It's
yeah.
and do you remember Rick doing a story for Middleburg Steel and Alloy? Do you remember that
yeah.
at corporate? And it potentially was a deadly dull subject matter. How on earth do you make but he took this, and I think we took the Hotel California soundtrack and designed the whole thing around that. It was fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to reading your memoirs and your book as well, because I'm sure it's going to be full of creative genius.
Brilliant.
There's a
But now
funny
tell
thing.
us how you got started and how did you keep yourself going?
Yeah, I just, as I say, I always wanted to write my memoirs, and I think what prompted me going to the workshop in Barrydale was a fantastic way to get going. Just meeting like-minded people, and the two Joannes, and getting on, and it was just really lovely. That's how I got started. I was always a bit intimidated because I thought, but I don't write that well. But then I thought to myself, it's going to be more sort of anecdotal. I don't want to be intimidated by the fact that um, I'm not that good with writing. So because I'm more images, but once I got started, I really enjoyed the process. I really did. As I say, my biggest problem was just putting it to one side every now and again and leaving it alone.
And leaving it and
And
then
leaving
picking
it,
it
and
up again.
that was the problem. But I think my wife at one point said, What's your book called again? Chasing the Light. I think you should call it The Great Procrastinator, because
Well,
that's what
that,
I was
yeah.
procrastinating a lot.
Yeah.
You know what you were saying about writing an anecdotal, that leads nicely into this question. So I think I'll start with you this time and then we'll move over to Rick. I wanted to say, how did you find your way into your voice and choose your material and decide how to structure it?
I think what I was wanted to do initially was just do it chronologically, my life from it, because I've had a really interesting life from growing up in a little deepest, darkest Africa, and then moving to lots of different countries growing up. And I thought I began by doing that, and that's how I started. And then a friend of mine wanted to proofread some of my stuff, Jim Turnbull, if he's listening. Hello, Jim. And he said, no, I don't think you should do it chronologically. There's a really important chapter in your life that was your leaving school, leaving home, and going on to a different continent at the age of 17 and a half. Start with that. And that was the key to it, because that was, I call it Into the Global Mystic, because that's really what it was. Going into the unknown. And so that's how my book actually starts, on that chapter. And then I revert back to the growing up,
Yeah.
the childhood years. And I think that worked really well, doing it like that. But fortunately, I've kept notes most of my life. So and that's helped me enormously, because I was always worried that that is something you can maybe comment on. I was worried that if I got factually things incorrect, how difficult is that with libel issues and all the rest of it? Should I say? So that I was a bit intimidated by that. Um, can you mention that? Is that an issue? Do you have issues with that as well?
Um, are you talking to Rick or me?
To you?
Oh, to me. You mean with remembering?
Well,
You know,
just getting incorrect facts about something or other that you state, and it's not actually that at all.
well, I mean, I think you have to do checking. I mean, a memoir, we all know memory is imperfect. But it's your memoir. It's the way you remember it. And it's your truth in a way. However, if you're talking about living through a time and you say that was when the first democratic election was, and you said it was in 1991, you need to check those facts.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yes.
do still need to check your facts, because you're going to lose credibility for the
Yeah.
whole thing if you get those things wrong. So so yes, you still do have to check, I think. But yeah. Okay, let's move over to Rick. Rick, um, how did you find your way into your voice, the way you wrote it, and your structure, and choosing your material?
Um, Look, in terms of my cancer book, that's sort of got a natural structure in it, from discovery through, and, this whole process of whether you're going to come out of it or not. So that's just kind of easy. But I think in what I'm actually working on now, um, simplistically, I found that bullet points on subject matter um, are handy. So I found myself, when I started writing, kind of getting lost in the words, and just meandering from one thing to another. And when I started to bullet points just the subject heads, I must have about 120 on the cursive clock along. Um, and so that's how I really tackle it. It turns out it has got a natural arc, but um, I write in my morning session. I don't really write that fast. I only write about 700 words. I hardly ever get to 1,000. Um, but I write fast, and I just try and knock that thing on the head, and I try not to go and edit. I try not to go back and edit it. And so I'm just plowing. I'm just going through it. Um, and I find
Yeah.
in terms of the voice, I'm not sure on the voice. It's not.
Well,
Well,
it's very much your voice. I can hear your personality, the way you speak
yeah,
in it. So,
yeah,
and if I may mention, Rick, because I think this is just useful in terms of we at a certain stage, Rick showed me the manuscript and we had a discussion about it. And originally he had the Clocalan material in this book, and we discussed it and decided that it was a different book. And
yeah,
that's as much true for memoir as it is for fiction. You have to decide, what is my story, what's the arc I'm
yeah,
telling. And the Clocalan story was a detour. It was a different book, a different story, which
yeah,
is very lucky because now you have another manuscript to work on.
Yeah. It's just there's an interesting thing about handwriting. My son Oliver has got a PhD in creative or in English and stuff. Um, he advised me to write longhand. And, you know, I remember hearing that Wilbur Smith had written just about all of his books longhand. And I thought that was so far-fetched. But I must admit, I then did start writing longhand. And the thing about writing longhand is that you don't go back and edit and massage and I've since learned not to do that, and so I'm back to typing. But I found it really helpful. And if I read my longhand stuff, um, I think it works really well, and I haven't. And the trouble with going when you on PC and you read yesterday's work this morning, you end up spending the whole morning editing sometimes an opening paragraph, and so you just get involved in that thing. And longhand has been very useful for me, but the problem with longhand is then dictating it and getting it down onto digital. And I know there are apps for all this, but I found that a laborious process. So that's why I've moved off it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so now let me move back to Tim and say, at any stage, did your momentum stall? I know you went on trips in between, but how did you pick up again and keep the faith? This is what a lot of people say, that they lose faith in their story. How did you keep? I know that's a problem, and I've published 5, written 6 books. And I know that in the writing process, that keeping on trusting that it's worth writing it's hard to maintain. So I'd like to hear that. And if you stalled, how did you get going again? But how did you keep the faith? So Tim first, and then
Yeah,
Rick.
I think for me I stalled quite a few times, and as I say, I got distracted easily. Not that I lost interest in the manuscript. I didn't ever lose interest. It was just I went on to other things, and I sort of put it to one side. And it was only really when a couple of mates said, "Come on, let's get moving with this." And I send us chapter by chapter, and then that really forced me. And then they would make me carry on. So I'm indebted to a couple of those blokes who really helped me. But I did enjoy the process. But it is easy. I suppose it depends on the individual to lose momentum, I think.
Yeah.
Um, Particularly if you're not. That's the thing. If you're commercially driven and you need to write to make money, that's your living. Then it's a whole different story. But
Totally.
we're
Yeah.
doing this for fun, really, and so. Um, but I think just encouragement from friends and saying, "Come on, get moving." I think that's
Yeah.
what really, really helped me. And then once I did that, once I'd finish a chapter, ship it off, get some feedback, and then I'd move on to the next one. So they really helped me a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rick.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm probably a little bit of a different animal, or a bit of a different case in a way. Because there's something that comes up, and I've done probably 3 of the memoir workshops, thanks to the fact that I've got the privilege of being in residence. But um, the a question I've heard so many times is, who's going to care? And Joe, you can answer that better than I can. But who's going to care? And that sort of bedevils people. Are like, why am I writing this thing? Who's going to care?
Yeah.
So in terms of who's going to care about mine, I've got this unusual thing that I'm supposed to be terminal. I'm supposed to be a terminal cancer sufferer because I've got melanoma, and apparently you can never get over that. But I'm not like that at all. But um, I'm just doing my memoir for really my kids and my family, really the kids actually, and that's what keeps me going because all this stuff, and today's urgent thing. We have to write a flippant ad for Melvin and Moon today, and we nearly missed a deadline, and all that stuff. They're not going to care about that. But one day, yeah, I mean, I told you I've got this sort of this leaning towards doing things in a quality way. So, I've got probably an audience of 5, but I see it as a coffee table book.
Mm,
Going to be like that, big, thick
mm,
hardcover with the pictures. Yeah,
mm.
that's a personal, yeah, sort of
Brilliant.
personal.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to finish up with my questions now, and Rick, I'll ask you first. So, your top tip for any of the writers out there who are just beginning or who are perhaps in the middle or stuck in the middle, anything that you think would help them?
See, I go back to bullet points. As a scriptwriter, um, I found this sort of the problem of overwriting and getting lost. And when I worked out that there only had to be 4 things that had to be communicated in this script, then it brought me back down to earth. And I'm finding that with my other writing as well. If I've got the bullet points and I've got those chapter headings, um, I find that so helpful because then I don't get lost in going
Yeah.
too long and going off track. Yeah,
I think that's a very, very useful tip. A little bit of planning. I mean,
yeah,
you can always change it, but if you know your destination and you know what you're going to write next, you don't
yeah.
so easily get lost in tangents and end up stuck in a corner somewhere.
And if
Thanks.
you give a chapter heading an evocative little title, an interesting title, it keeps you interested. And you look at that
Yeah,
title, well, I really want to write this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Tim,
Yeah,
your top tip.
I think I want to promote this little Berriedale experience because I really think that was a brilliant, if people can afford to go there and have time, um, it's such a wonderful way to meet people, to learn about structure and to learn about the basics of writing memoirs and short stories. So I think that really motivated me, just going there and spending that weekend with like-minded people, as I mentioned earlier. Um,
Yeah,
they give you little exercises and you do those and you get feedback on that. And I think that really helped me enormously. And I got back ready to go. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, when's the next one of these workshops happening?
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to say more about it at the end, but the next weekend workshop is in May, the 8th to the 10th, and then the retreat that follows is from the 10th to the 15th. And yeah, we we mm, basically full, nearly full for the retreat, but there are certainly still spaces for the work in the workshop.
Joe, on the
Yeah,
for people who haven't experienced it, there was something that I bothered a bit about, which is being in a room full of strangers. And and I've seen this every time, you start, maybe there's 12, 14 people, whatever, and you walk into this room and you look around and you think, how am I going to, how is this going to be? You're just judging people by what they look like and their age and stuff. But the memoir process, because you're sharing your work and you're getting an exercise, and John, I give you an exercise, okay, write a bit on character or write a bit on situation or describe or whatever. Um, People end up sharing a lot and actually you end up sharing a lot of personal stuff. And you walk into a room of strangers, and I tell you, a day and a half later, you're like bonded by like
I
brother.
know.
It's
It's
incredible.
something we notice about all our courses is that people make sort of lifelong,
Yeah,
um, bonded friends and stick it right in groups together. And it is amazing what it does,
like that.
that
Yeah,
process. Yeah.
yeah, amazing process.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so now ask them questions. Ask them questions that they can answer. Um, and put your questions in the chat box, and I will try to follow and pass them along and ask them to answer for you. Yeah, I see. Yeah, there's a couple of comments so far, but questions. Somebody said your characters have their own minds, but of course, I think he's referring to fiction, and you have both written memoirs.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions, people, for them. Rick, there we are. What was the proposed title of your next book? From Frankie.
Well, my next book, which is I'm on, is the Curse of Clocolon and the Search for the Proper Way. So it's a question of I'm a sort of fanatic for doing stuff in the old-fashioned way, and I value a handwritten note, the black fountain pen written by in one or the Mont Blanc or whatever over an SMS. And so my my things, it's actually a manual of doing things in the proper. It's often quite an old-fashioned way, but the Curse of Clocolon was a farm that we owned called the Prinsburg Estate outside Clocolon, which labored under this thing called the Curse of Clocolon, which was an inheritance issue. And that had a huge part of my life and Sue's life. And so it's a kind of a combination between a manual and a memoir, and the Curse of Clocolon and the Search for the Proper Way.
Brilliant. And then somebody else asked, did you use real names when talking about your cancer treatment?
No, yeah, my own oncologist, Louis Caton, I mentioned him. The oncologist that I kind of fired, I don't name her, but I gave her a pseudonym. But an interesting thing when using real names, a big turning point for me was hearing Deepak Chopra say that medical science, for all its genius, knows less than 10% of what the body knows on how to fix itself or what the body knows. And so I relied there was a turning point for me, and I've referenced Deepak Chopra. And then Mensch Publishing in the UK, and I hadn't been following Deepak Chopra, and they said, well, obviously we're going to be dropping Deepak Chopra's name. And I was kind of, and then I checked out, and he's been linked to the flippin' Epstein scandal.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much, but there's an illusion there. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and it's sometimes, yeah, I've been kind of advised not to mention people's real names. But sometimes, yeah. Anyway, I'll be dropping Deepak's name, unfortunately. He'll just become a spiritual leader and meditate. Yeah.
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 Okay. Okay. Mari asks, and let's start with Tim now. She asks of both of you, how totally honest did you think you had to be about things which put other people in a bad light?
Yeah, good question, Alex, because that comes up a lot. And sure, it was tricky. So a lot of the time I would deviate around issues like that, because it wasn't really where I was coming from. So, but it's something you really got to think about a lot, and I didn't want anything sort of contentious.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah. I know. I've also found myself, I haven't really had much negative stuff to write about, but I know an early marriage didn't work out and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it does play on your mind a bit. But I think unless you're trying to press a point or whatever, it's kind of easy to skirt around stuff like that. Yeah, my memoir
Not
isn't really.
always. It depends what you're writing, of course.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he has a similar one. In fact, but I think we've talked about it. One thing about writing a memoir that's always concerned me is how you deal with sensitive topics that might potentially offend someone else, especially as memory isn't always accurate. Well, a lot of people have written memoirs that do offend people, and sometimes that might be the main point of the story you're telling. And it's the point of things, and it's going to offend people. But in the end, it's your story, it's your memoir. And what we always recommend is don't worry about it till you've finished. Don't let
yeah,
that sit on your shoulder while you're writing. Write the story, write it as best you can, and then worry about how badly you care. You
yeah.
know,
And do
as
you do you
The other Joanne always quotes. She says and I don't know where she gets this from, but she's quoting someone else. But the quote is, if people wanted you to write about them in a nicer way, they should have behaved better in the first place.
Good point.
Sorry, I
Good
cut in
point.
on one of you.
No, that's a good point. No, I'm just thinking, do you ever, when you come to the end of your writing, Joe, do you ever sort of seek legal advice? Or do you need to take that route?
Well, I've previously my 5 books have been novels, so they're fiction. So, despite the fact that my mother always believed she was every mother in every subsequent book, and went into hand-wringing horror over the mothers and how I might or might not have seen her, I could always say, but it's fiction, Mom. I have now written my first non-fiction manuscript, which is in a very sensitive evaluatory stage. So I don't want to say too much about it. In fact, I told Trish I had the worst anxiety dream last night. I woke at 4 a.m. and dreamt that my publisher said I had to meet her, and I was so nervous. And I met her, and we met in a corridor full of scurrying people. And she said, "We can't meet here. We need to go to a coffee shop." And I followed her outside, and I lost her. And I ran up that road, and then I ran up that road, and then I lost my phone and had to find it, and then ran up every road, and then I couldn't get through. Anyway, sorry, that's beside the point. But part of it, yes, I'm having to face a very different scenario with this, because it is nonfiction, and it does, say things that some people may not like or will not like, let's say. And I have not used real names, um, but nonetheless, I would say, but um, the I guess the people who might be most likely to sue me are dead, luckily, because you can't sue for defamation if you're dead. And um, I don't think the others are contentious enough. They might not like what I write, but I don't think it's suable stuff. Anyway, I
Well,
probably said too much.
No, but that's important. It's really important to know that stuff because certainly I think about it a lot when I write stuff down. I think, how's this going to go down? Yeah.
found that when I sort of almost reached the final phase of this thing is now completed, suddenly realizing that someone was actually going to read this now, and
Yes.
they might be challenging, and so I had a lot of stuff that I'd taken on as fact, you know, like the human body, knows, medical science knows less than 10% what the human body knows. And I find myself really kind of wanting to research that a bit, because, um, and also I find in my own memory, I've really kind of developed stories, and there's kind of a bit of fiction that comes into that kind of storytelling because, you're making it a better story. And I found a lot of, I need to, quite a lot of fact checking in a way,
Mm,
just to make, yeah,
mm, mm. Um, okay, yes, and I agree, although when Rick says there's a bit of it's not that you're making stuff up, but you are using the skills of fiction to
yeah,
write. So you are recreating to the best of your ability from memory. Or if your book is about nonfiction, about somebody else, to the best of your research.
yeah,
But if you're using memoir to the best of your own memory, you are recreating in scenes, which includes dialogue. And of course, it's we all recognize that if you're writing about 20 years ago, you are not going to remember the exact words, but you are going to the best of your ability, recreate that dialogue as close to your truth as you remember. Um,
So when
so
you put that dialogue in quotation marks, are you then trying to say this is 100% was accurate when you
no,
write?
if you're
No.
writing dialogue, no, you're writing a scene and
Yeah,
you are putting your dialogue probably in inverted commas but that just indicates that it's dialogue, and
yeah,
everybody is going to recognize that you have recreated that from memory, and your memory is not 100% perfect. You're going to remember it the best you can.
yeah,
But you're writing in scenes because otherwise your memoir would be deadly dull.
yeah.
You would be telling and not showing.
I
If
got,
you write it in scenes, you draw us in, you allow us to experience those moments with you. So
yeah,
you use the kind of skills of fiction in
yeah,
order to write nonfiction dramatically.
yeah. In terms of getting over the insecurity of writing, Oliver, my son, said to me, listen, because I don't regard myself as very well read. So, um, and Oliver said, look, if you're worried about, you know, the complexity of writing, read Ernest Hemingway. You know, Hemingway writes in very short sentences, and it's very like staccato like that. And I really took that to heart, and actually started reading a lot of Hemingway. Um, but then I found how well read Hemingway is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
References
yeah. So style. Mm. So
terribly well.
there are a couple of comments. Our Sally Andrew, hi Sally, saw you there. Says, I hear you about self-publishing and your own kids being your main focus, but what about reaching more far and wide for all those diagnosed with stage 4? Oh, well, I know it is a question in a way. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I would say that's uh, yeah, you've got to go digital and international like that through what are their names again? The biggest bookstore on the planet. Um, um, who do you publish through?
Amazon.
Self-publishing?
Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm definitely putting my book onto Amazon. And that's going to be the cheap one because that's print on demand and it's black and white and you do get a color cover, etc. So that's going to be the cheap one. And then I'll hold on to my quality thing with a different way of getting that.
mm,
So I think Amazon is completely the answer for going global. But Amazon's just a really delivery mechanism. You still got to do all your own promotion, and even though you're on Amazon, yeah.
Um, so okay, there's somebody who said that a friend of theirs shelved his memoir because of potentially causing offense, and pseudonyms wouldn't help because the events were well known. It's a pity because he's lived an exciting and fascinating life. I guess it depends how, I always say, I think in a funny way, I'm first and foremost a writer. So I know that, members of my family, including my mother, and didn't like certain things about it, and there will be people who don't like things about this book. But to me, it's a worse fate not to publish because I'm a writer. That's what I am. I almost see it as my reason for being. But
Yeah.
but for other people, it's not. It's more important, that has to be your decision, your choice. Somebody says if you quote what somebody said, do you have to ask their permission first? No, absolutely. If they said it to you, you heard it, you you write it, if it's important to your story. I've been told in the past, this is Lynn, that a memoir should be focused on a particular time frame or aspect of your life. Are your books life stories or thematic or timelines? Okay, that's interesting because they're different. Yeah, Rick.
Um, yeah, I think mine's more of a life story, you know.
Well, it's not really because it's not your whole life. It's thematic
No, I
because
mean
it's about your cancer story.
yeah, no, my cancer that's a short thing. That's like 4 years, you know.
Yeah.
Then obviously you do leap out into,
Yeah,
life
yeah,
as
sure,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
um,
it can be anything. A memoir can be from 3 weeks to
yeah,
30 years. Tim,
yeah.
tell us about yours.
Yeah, mine's definitely a life story. Starting from way back when, and right up to the contemporary times. And I've just finished filming a series now in Franschhoek called, dare I say it, Love Island? Dare I say it? Probably get shot. But the thing is, that's been mentioned now, so it is right up to the contemporary time. And that's the other problem I have is what is the optimum length for a memoir in terms of, because I keep there's so many stories because mine's a lot about travel and adventure and going to extraordinary places and being privileged enough to do that, and I just have to put the brakes on and say, look, I must stop now, otherwise this will just go on indefinitely. Is there an optimum length, or is that fairly flexible
For a
for
book.
your for your manuscript? Yes.
Um, it's generally, I mean, there are huge exceptions to this, of course, but sort of generally, I think accepted anything from sort of 65, 70 to 90,000. But there's certain books that are much shorter. They are,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, so many exceptions,
Yeah, I'm
but
sure.
not too long, especially if it's a first.
I mean, there's just, and we're all writers on this call, so enjoy, and you in particular, but I think as you write, you can feel when you're going to lose this audience. You can feel this is not interesting now. And
Yes,
that's quite an interesting process as I write. You're almost you're sort of keeping a fish on the line in a way. When
yeah.
are they going to say, listen, I'm out of here and poof, and I'm not going to read this thing anymore. And that's quite a challenging, it's an ongoing challenge of just assessing whether it's holding or not. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you should keep that feel, because often that will tell you when you've slipped out of your arc and what you're writing isn't carrying your story forward anymore, isn't keeping the tension high, you've slipped into a sidetrack, and when you sort of feel bored yourself, then that's the time to look at it and say, am I being boring? If I'm boring myself, I'm probably being boring. Yeah. Um, okay. There are a lot of comments and things here. Um,
Structure of the structure of the memoir workshop, because that's quite interesting.
yeah.
Subject matter you deal with in terms of the workshop.
Um, s- the okay. The structure of the memoir workshop in Barrydale you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we try to take people through the skills, because a lot, and remind people, because some people have written before. Not everybody who comes is a complete beginner writer. But sometimes we all need to be reminded of the skills and the processes. And so we try to take people through the skills that you need in order to write an interesting memoir. So we take them through story, then writing in scenes, using detail, showing um, uh, different kinds of memoirs, um, reflecting along the way, delving into your life, how you choose what to write about, all those kind of issues.
So just on comments on that. Say it's on detail. So Joe, okay, I'll give you this brief. You got 15 minutes to write something on to do with detail, and then so 15 minutes, not very long, and then everybody returns, and then everybody reads their piece, and from that there's such a big learning curve because Joe, I mean, you and the other Joe are tremendously good listeners, and they don't talk that much, but I find your listening ability is extraordinary, and the way that you will say to somebody, okay, now here's the other way of doing that, and so it's a big learning curve that goes around that room all the time. So there's a lot of
And
learning.
and I always find, even in a group, a big group, you might think, oh my God, I have to listen to everybody else's pieces now when I just want to read my own. But actually, you learn just as much from listening to everybody else's as you
Yeah.
say.
You're right, and it's such a diverse group of people with all different stories. As Rick says, it was that's fascinating for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm just trying to wade through here and see. Um, uh, all right. There's lots of long things that I can't tackle now. Um, okay. All right. There was one. Okay. Here's quite a practical one, and um, I will answer as best I can, and I might call on somebody in the audience actually. So Lynn says, I'm writing a piece of autobiographical fiction involving a dead, very famous comedian. I'm concerned about using his real name as his family is still alive. Does that skirt the defamation issue? It's very edgy. True story, so you could call this creative nonfiction. So it's written with the skills of fiction, I I gather, but but it's true. She's not changing or making things up, which makes it non-fiction rather than fiction. As I understand it, a dead person cannot be defamed. And I see Jeremy, am I correct? You can unmute yourself and confirm that. Yes.
Yes, you cannot defame somebody who's dead.
Thank
The
you.
heirs and the family cannot sue you.
Yeah, as I thought. Thank you very much for that.
Somebody earlier asked about getting permission to quote, and you correctly said you don't need to ask the person who imparted information or facts to you if you have permission to quote them. But obviously, if they've put it in print themselves, it might be subject to copyright, and if you want to use it, you might need to ask.
Sure, that was a point I didn't think of. Thank you very much. Jeremy is an attorney, and recognized him from way back. So it was very useful to be able to call on you. Thank you. Okay, is there anything anybody else would like to ask or ask about Barrydale? Let me give you the dates of that again. As I said, the retreat is very is nearly full. The retreat is sort of one place left. That's the retreat is not just for memoir writers, but it's for people who are writing anything. The memoir workshop still has some places on it for the weekend, and that weekend is from the 8th to 10th of May, and the retreat is from the 10th to 15th. Anything else at this stage, just unmute yourselves, I think, if you would like to ask something particularly about Barrydale or a last question to Rick or Tim.
I'll see you around the bar if you like.
Rick is in his new
There's the
tequila.
bar.
Yeah.
This is the tequila library that's supposed to be being put together. Soon
Yes.
I've got to go to Mexico to find the world's most obscure tequilas that are going to be living in taverns. And that's the map room over there. But
The map room is lovely. It's where we do some of the workshops.
Have you still got the cinema upstairs, Rick?
the cinema, yeah, we've got the cinema. Who's in this bar here? Okay.
Oh, there we are. We're getting a little walkthrough.
Awesome.
So there's the map room, hey?
That's Jonathan Rees, the world-class photographer. Anyway, yeah, so that's what it is. There's we've got a movie house, which is quite a fun thing. This is the map room for people who live on GPS all their lives and don't know where they're going. Now the hotel's very quirky. It's not over the top, but it's different.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This was really great fun. I enjoyed it hugely. I'm feeling a little self-conscious about revealing so much about my anxiety dreams.
You should be self-publishing, Joe. Forget about that.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. It's always lovely to see you here. You will get a thank you and the recording and all the, the details of stuff that we talked about will be there in your thank you letter. So it was lovely to see you, and see you, if not in Barrydale, see you all in the next webinar next month.
Good.
Well done. Thanks. Thank you very much. It was
Thanks,
fun.
Joe, for having us.
Thank you.
See you in the pub, Rick.
Yeah. Okay. Over and out.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Lovely to see you.
And you too, Joanne. It's great. Nostalgic. That's where I am. Okay. All right.